Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker. She's the host of the program, and this is the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Barb Schlinker, the owner broker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Now, Barb, a lot of people believe that real estate commissions are too high for the services that they receive. Now that the rules have changed, do Colorado home sellers have to pay the buyer's agent commission?
Well, Richard, they don't, and it is negotiable now after the National Association of Realtors settled that lawsuit last year. A lot of buyers agents are still asking for it. They're asking for a full commission. Um, but, at the end of the day, not all real estate agents are the same. In fact, we're all different. Everybody has different experience level, different time frames of when they've been in the business. And so you really want to make sure that when you're selling a home in particular, that you're absolutely finding somebody that knows how to create demand. And that's absolutely important when it comes to putting the house on the market, because if you have more than one offer or if you have increased demand, you are more likely to be in a better position to negotiate to get the terms that you want. And of course, everybody wants a great deal on a house. Um, and so, but not every real estate agent does the same services, right? A lot of people just assume it's a generic commodity. You take your house, you sign with an agent, you stick it in the multiple listing service, and all the buyers come. But that's not really the case because there's all these tech companies that kind of intercepted our business in the last 10 or 15 years. And they create better websites than the listing service by far. So I find that the buyers aren't even there. They're not looking at multiple listing services in most cases. They're looking at the tech companies, Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com. What does that look like? And how does it compare to the other homes around you? So if you hire an agent that says, "Oh, I'll do it for a few $100s," they may not really market the home to create the best amount of money for you, may not be able to create demand. And then you're in a position where you're not negotiating from strength and you're having to pay concessions, pay big fees, all that kind of thing in the end. So this lawsuit came about, it started about maybe 12 years ago, where some home sellers in Chicago said, wait. If I list with an agent and she's or he is charging me 6% and some of that money is going to the buyer's agent, then the buyer's agent is coming in and trying to beat me up on price and concessions, inspection repairs, threatening not to close, etc. It's almost like being sued and having to pay somebody else's attorney. And so initially, it was kind of like a no big deal, but it became a class action lawsuit. And when the DOJ got involved, they started looking into exactly how the pricing of how commission would be paid was positioned. And some of these brokerages actually had embedded into their training documentation that said, if you don't, it will mandate to their agents that if you have to offer at least whatever, 2.5%, 3%, 2.8% to the agent that brings the buyer. And if you don't do that, the agents are not going to show your listing. They're going to move on to the listing that offers more. That is called antitrust and price fixing. And so some big box real estate brokerages had to pay big dollar amounts to settle that. Finally, the National Association of Realtors got involved and said, okay, stop, because there were more and more class action lawsuits happening. These attorneys were sending out postcards, even in this market, that said, hey, if you listed with this company and you paid a commission, I'm in the middle of a class action lawsuit and I can get it back for you. So they had to stop it because it was going to keep going. And they agreed to pay an extraordinary amount of money. And two rules came out of it. One of them was that before an agent showed the home, they had to have a written agreement about how they would be paid. Okay. which is good. I was glad to see that because at least they were having a conversation. That wasn't the case before. Before, agents were actually meeting buyers at the front door. So here's the seller. They're scrambling to get their house ready. They've got everything show perfect. Everything's put away. They grab the kids and dogs. They get out of the house for the showing. And they're assuming that this buyer wants a home like that this buyer qualifies to buy a home like that. But at the end of the day, the agent has no idea. The first time they meet them is at the door. And the reason they're meeting is because they're a maybe buyer. They didn't even know if they qualified to buy a house. That's still not mandated to this day. Now, the change is they actually have to have an agreement to show a home. The problem is there is no policing of that one thing. Like nobody's saying, well, show me your document that you signed with your buyer. Nobody's asking to verify it. So I don't think much has changed, except one key thing is that no longer is any brokerage, any agent allowed to advertise how much commission is offered to the buyer's agent anywhere online, including and especially on the multiple listing service. Right before this change happened, they were publishing it out on Zillow. They thought that was fair. If we just put it out there, then we'll be transparent to the buyers that, okay, this seller's offering two, this seller's offering 2.5, and the buyer will know, and then they can still go look at the house anyway if they ask to. But that didn't work so well because it kind of pitted sellers against each other. And it was still happening. We actually had a listing last year. We took over from another brokerage that offered just 1% to the buyer's agent in the multiple listing service. And her complaint was there were no showings. It was a low priced home that was beautiful and remodeled. There were no showings because the agents didn't want to leave their fuzzy bunny slippers for 1%. So what happened was the state put it in the contract as the last paragraph right before additional provisions that is basically a request between the buyer and seller on how much the seller will pay the buyer's agent as part of their commission at closing. And it is negotiable. It could be that the seller pays, it could be that the buyer pays some of it, it could be that the listing agent pays some of it. So I think that's a good thing. And I get the question all the time. So the way the agents deal with that is they'll call me and go, well, is your seller offering a commission? I even had one last week give me what for about the form that I filled out. Well, didn't you fill it out on your agreement? I said, I don't work the way everybody else does, but there's some room in the budget. Bring your offer. But I see this a lot where these agents kind of put themselves between the buyer, right, and getting the house over their fee. A year ago, I put this house on the market. We hadn't started showing yet. We were still waiting for the open house. And some buyer called and buyer's agent called and asked to get in. So here he was. Picture this. He's sitting in front of the home. They're in two cars. The agent's in one car, the buyer's in another car. The buyer's in the second car pointing to that house. That one, agent, that one I want to see. And the agent called me and said, hey, can we get in early? I said, yeah, we could work that out. And he's like, well, by the way, I need to know, is your seller going to pay me 3% if I bring an offer? I said, well, it depends on the offer. Put it in the offer. It's negotiable. And he goes, oh, I need to know because I'm worth 3%. And if I don't get paid 3%, my buyer is not going to come out of pocket for my fee. And so I said, I'm sure there's some in the budget for it. Just put it in the offer. And he goes, forget it. I'm not going to show it. So he took that buyer away from the home because he couldn't get the number that he wanted to open a door and write a 10-minute contract. So as I see as this going more and more forward, my prediction is going to be both the sellers and the buyers are going to be asking, wait, what? Okay, you want the seller to pay your fee or you want me to pay your fee. What do you do for that again? I'm sorry. And that's a really good question. So it's become very interesting over time. And I think that there are some really good buyer's agents. There are some really good agents out there with experience and expertise. But it's not an entitlement anymore like it was before, and not everybody has gotten the word. And occasionally, some of these agents will prevent their buyers from getting the house over that line in the sand. We're working on one right now where the seller was willing to pay the buyer's agent almost $14,000 to open a door, write a 10-minute contract, and that was unacceptable to that buyer. And that buyer got his buyer to walk away. His buyer said the agent said his buyer was absolutely loving with the house and will work with you however you want. But that was the thing that broke the deal. Isn't that surprising, Richard?
You'd like to believe that the customer is always right. You have somebody who might love this house and want it, and because you're not getting what you want as the agent, you're going to walk away from it. That's not doing a service to the person that you have a fiduciary relationship with.
Exactly. And that's the thing is if fiduciary means you put their needs ahead of your own. That was the whole reason the buyer agency thing came about 20 or so years ago. But now it's going the other way. It's like, well, only if you get the seller to pay my fee will I be your fiduciary. Otherwise, we'll move on and go find another house. So it's kind of crazy. It's really fun to see negotiations go on again. I absolutely enjoy that part. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the broker owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty and the host of this show. And we're talking about whether or not Colorado home sellers have to pay the buyer's agent commission. And next up, we're just going to briefly talk about ways that you can negotiate. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. You can reach her at 719-301-3900. And we're talking, Barb, about a somewhat sensitive topic, real estate commissions, and are agents really worth it? So, Barb, what are some other things that a home seller should look for when they're choosing an agent to represent them on one of their very largest assets?
Well, not everybody knows about negotiations, and they also don't know how to interview people. So whether you're working with as a home seller or a home buyer, you should ask the agent not the years of experience, but the volume of sales. Just to put it in perspective, I know plenty of agents that might have had their license for 30 years, but they might sell one or two every other year. Or you might have somebody that's selling a lot of homes. Right now, half of the agents don't sell any, and the other half, a majority of them, are only selling 3 or 4 homes a year. That's not very many when you think about it. You could probably make more working at McDonald's. So, nothing wrong with McDonald's. I'm just saying that the hardest thing in this business is to get business. And also part of it has to do with the agents aren't really trained to negotiate. We've become very entitled for that fee and just become basically a messenger sending an email. Some of the agents don't even call me when they're bringing an offer. They just fire it off to me, and there is an emotional piece of this, especially if there's multiple offers. You want to sell your buyer if you have competition, and a lot of them just don't do it. They're not trained to do it, but we are. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900. We offer a free in-home consultation on how to get your house ready for sale, what to do, what not to do. We show up with multiple offers out of the gate and then give you a really good idea what price range your home will sell for and how much you'll put in your pocket when it sells. All you need to do is call us 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice. That's Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. If you're thinking of making a move, call Barb 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. A short break. When we come back, we'll be discussing, do Colorado home sellers wait for multiple offers? That when we come back.